What was the worst job interview you've had? I had an interview where I knew the answers I gave were good. Solid examples. I understood the technical side well. But the interviewer kept sneering. Being rude and saying, "Really?" in a skeptical tone, and I got the distinct impression he hated me. About 20 minutes in, I thought about politely calling it a day and leaving, but in my innocence thought it would be good practice to stay. 40 minutes in, it's like a light switch goes off inside, and he's the nicest guy. His eyes light up and he started hard selling the role and position to me. Introduces me to the team. The director interviews me and he and the team are lovely. Apparently, their interview technique is to be rude to see how you perform under pressure, and they'd all been observing using a camera and were impressed I remained so polite and calm throughout. They couldn't understand why I declined. Edit. To save me responding to comments. I understand pressure testing is a legitimate technique. And whilst I felt deeply uncomfortable and my gut was screaming at me to get out of there, like in a nightclub when you know the creepy guy is really bad news and you need to get out, I understood that it was a possibility that is what he could have been doing. However, to add more context, they had my work history, including 10 years in the ambulance services, which involves resuscitation whilst the public yell at you and threaten you. I'm used to being polite and professional whilst being harassed and threatened. Nothing spreadsheet-based. Even pulling all-nighters is going to match that for pressure, and I'm well known for staying calm and composed all the time, even if I'm exploding inside. My biggest objection was not realizing I was being broadcast and hearing them discuss my reactions to my face. Like I was some kind of movie actor. It felt so violating. At an interview to be a county street sweeper. Guy asks me if I have a girlfriend. Proceeds to rant for 5 minutes how young people don't get married anymore. Then he asks me what I want to avoid at the job. At the time I had no idea how to answer, as I'd never been asked that in an interview before. So I ask him to clarify. To which he just repeats the question over and over until he gets super angry that I don't know how to answer that. Then asks me to leave. To this day, biggest WTF interview I've had. Showed up looking good in my suit with a ton of knowledge on Capital Partners. It turned out I had researched the wrong company named Capital Partners. Interviewer. Putting candy bars on the table to open the interview. Have a candy bar. Do you want Hershey's or Snickers? Me. Neither. Thanks. I. Go ahead. Pick one. M. I don't want any candy now. Thanks. I. Take one. Hershey's or Snickers? M. Okay. I'll take the Snickers. I. No. I want the Snickers. You take the Hershey's. M. No. Thank you. I was interviewing for a job in Houston. And lived in Austin. About 2.5 hours away. I drove to Houston for the first round of interviews. And they said it went well and wanted to bring me in for a final interview. So I drove there again. It seemed like it went well, and they told me they had one more interview to conduct and would have a decision tomorrow. So the next day came and went. I emailed the manager to ask if any decision had been made. Nothing. Waited a couple more days. Left a voicemail. Nothing. Then a couple days later, I just called the main number for the company and told the receptionist why I was calling. She was like, well, someone just started in that job yesterday. They ghosted me after I drove a total of 10 hours to interview twice. Still salty about that 11 years later. Had an interview. Went well. I was offering the job on the spot and accepted. The HR manager went to get the needed paperwork. Came back 10 minutes later and said, I must have forgot that we already filled this position. I'm sorry. But we don't have an opening. I could call you if something opens back up. I said no thank you. Video chat interview. Red flag number 1. The interview was with 10 interviewers. I was told it would be one-on-one. Red flag number 2. Towards the end they asked if I had any questions. When I asked, do you all enjoy working here? They all looked at each other nervously for about 20 seconds until someone said, sure. I mean, as much as you can enjoy work. I guess. Nope. I told them I couldn't answer their questions. Farted audibly out of stress and thanked them for their time. My personal favorite bad interview. I had been unemployed for a bit. Was desperate for a new gig. Had gained a lot of weight living off of fast food. So my good pants didn't fit me very well. I sat down in the interview chair as the person was walking around to their side of the desk. ... And the button of my pants popped off. Did a one-hopper off of the desk. and right into their coffee cup. Swished. No clink at all. For the entire interview. They were sipping their coffee. And I was sitting there with my pants unbuttoned waiting for the big reveal. I left before they got to the bottom of their coffee. But they had to have put 2 and 2 together. This narrowly beats out the time I was offered water from a carafe at an interview. Dropped it. And soaked both interviewers. At least that one wasn't as psychologically tense. Edit. No. I didn't get the job. Edit 2. Yes. I should have told them. But I froze up. And they were a very talkative interviewer. Yeah, I have one that sticks out. I applied to a government branch as a network admin. The newspaper ad asked for a bachelor's degree. They called me into the interview. When I got there, the first thing the interviewer said was, "We wanted someone with a master's degree. Why did you apply?" Now, I wanted to give them the benefit of the doubt. Maybe they had other interviews that day and got them mixed up. Shit happens. I just informed the interviewer that the ad I applied for requested a bachelor's degree. And confirmed the position I was interviewing for. No. We definitely wanted someone with a master's degree. So, again, why did you apply? If you wanted someone with a master's degree, why did you bother calling me in for an interview? You're very rude and unprofessional. Yeah. You fucked up at every junction thus far. But I'm the one who's rude and unprofessional. I went in to apply for an administrative assistant position and the guy kept asking me questions about liking kids and are my passports up to date, etc. I was so confused. Turns out what he really wanted was a nanny for his 2 young kids to travel with him and his wife back to India. I was so pissed he wasted my time. I noped right the fuck out of there. Started as the worst. And ended as the best. The beginning started like this. "I'm so sorry to have to inform you of this. But we pulled the wrong resume contact information. We didn't mean to call you in for an interview." Before leaving, the interviewer gave me a brief tour of the company grounds, because they felt so bad for wasting my time. They introduced me to the department head that I would have been working for. If that department was actually hiring. Had a great conversation and the department head was convinced that I would be an asset to them. And they hired me on the spot. Edit. Just wanted to add, since this got way more attention than I thought, that I have been with this company for over 8 years now. And they are an awesome bunch of people. It was a very lucky day for me. Realized it was a pyramid scheme halfway through the interview. I was already working so didn't accept the job. I applied for an internship at a human rights law office. They gave me questions on the spot to debate with them. Like, should people accused of rape remain anonymous until convicted? And, is bribery acceptable if it's for a good cause? It was me versus a panel of 5 senior human rights lawyers for a whole hour. Who just ripped me apart from start to finish. Everything I said. They made sound like the dumbest response with their rebuttals. By the end I was a nervous babbling wreck. Did not get the internship. But did appreciate the experience in retrospect. When they got back to me, they told me, "Your resume, was fantastic. So we were quite disappointed with how poor your interview was." Burn. 5 interview rounds with the last interview round being with the CEO, all for an entry-level customer service job. During the last interview, the CEO said you weren't allowed to get sick. And you weren't allowed to leave at the end of the day until all of the work had been done. So even though the job was 8 to 4, the CEO said customer service reps often stayed until 6 p.m. or later. She also asked if I would be comfortable secretly reporting to her about what the customer service team is up to. I declined the job offer and the company harassed me with emails asking why and what they did wrong. Really glad I didn't take the job. I was the only person that hour was able to source for a role and I still got rejected. My first interview ever was at DQ and I accidentally knocked a 90-year-old woman over. I went into a family-owned custom furniture shop that had several openings in the carpentry department, red flag number 1. When I arrived I spoke to the person at the front of house stating I was there for an interview. The conversation went as follows. Note: owner's office was directly behind the front desk. He was watching us through a 2-way mirror. Meet a front desk clerk. "Hi, I'm here to interview for the carpenter position. I saw your post online." Owner storms out of his office. Points a finger at me. Face full of anger, red flag number 2. Owner: "Are you experienced?" Me: "Yes. I have 7 years experience with carpentry. But I am new to furniture." Owner: You. Experienced? Red flag number 3. Me. Yes. Owner. Fine. I'll get the lead carpenter and he'll talk to you. At this point I should have noped the fuck out of there. But I had been unemployed for some time and my savings was running on fumes. So I assumed he may have just been in a bad mood that day. So I had waited for the lead carpenter. Lead carpenter comes out and we have the interview on the sales floor. Interview goes as normal until he asks me about my experience. Carpenter. So tell me how you have experience with woodwork but not with furniture. Me. I build musical instruments. I am familiar with all power tools and measurements required. Carpenter looks at me like I have 2 heads while I explain this. But the rest of the interview proceeds as normal. He stated he'd start me off at $10 per hour probational hire for 2 weeks to see how I fit. Part of the interview comes where he asked if I have any questions. Me. So is the owner having a bad day? Carpenter. No. That's how he is. Red flag number 4. We have an awkward silence staring at each other for about 10 seconds. Then without saying anything I just walk out. Found out a few weeks later from a friend who is a woodworker that place is known amongst furniture woodworkers as the place you want to avoid, and he mentioned that a few days before I interviewed that their entire carpentry staff minus the lead carpenter, about 8 people, walked out. I now live about a mile from that store and pass it on my daily commute. Every 5 to 6 months they put up a now hiring all positions sign up front. Can't imagine how many people they have cycled through at this point. Edit. Holy cow, I didn't expect this to get upvoted. Awards and comments. Thank you all so much. To answer a few questions. The carpentry shop is in South Florida. Apparently they stay in business because they do amazing work. Two-way mirror, also known as two-way glass. A two-way mirror is glass that is reflective on one side and clear on the other, giving the appearance of a mirror to those who see the reflection but allowing people on the clear side to see through. As if at a window. The name is misleading, but that's what it's called. This was 4 years ago now. So $10 per hour was way too low for the verbal abuse and labor. In my early 20s I built guitars, ukuleles and occasionally violins. I have since changed vocations, but still repair them from time to time. It was my best interview. Great rapport with the interviewer. Gave me the job on the spot. It for a transfer to QA at Johnson Control. Came in to work the next day to have the offer rescinded. The job was already given to the plant manager's niece and it had only been posted because of company policy. The story is much longer and complicated afterward, but it was the first of several times I had been promoted, different companies, and then been told. Never mind. Edit. Appreciate the replies and awards. Feel like I won Reddit today. Edit. Wow. Johnson Controls is really not well liked. I had a Skype interview with a private practice and the lady interviewing me literally made it sound like a stern military parent. You can never be late. Mind you, the job was an hour away. Even if you have a cold you can never call in sick. IDK if this was meant for pre or post-COVID. We're a small company so you won't have much of a work-life balance. PS our pay for all this dedication is only $3 more than the measly pay you're getting now. Just a whole interview of red flags. And the last one was when the lady messaged me immediately after saying I got the job and had to leave my job at maximum 5 days notice. Regardless of me kind of bombing the interview and claiming there were other interviewees in line. I could see why they were having trouble HRING people TBH. As the interviewer, candidate responded to a question I asked with, "Is that really how you want to spend our time together? By asking me that question?" When I wrote up my notes I included that bit. It obviously came up in the debrief and a huge red flag. Other interviewers also had similar, though not as serious, feedback on the candidate. He was not hired. And #X200B. As the interviewee, interviewer immediately launched into, with a rough accusatory tone, "You're a job hopper. Why are you a job hopper?" When I was being recruited for a role a few years ago, I'd been working, successfully, as an independent consultant for 7 or 8 years, which she equated with job hopping. I ended that interview pretty quickly with "I don't think this is going to be a good fit," and gave the recruiter some pointed feedback. He seemed to acknowledge that she was difficult. Had a phone interview and the woman kept asking more and more intrusive questions. Kept hinting I'm a total piece of shit who's totally unfit for the job. It was the easiest job description ever, and jumping to conclusions about my life that were completely untrue. For example, I found out that being a freelancer who gets a lot of decently paid work each month is apparently living off my parents. She kept going on and on like that for quite a while before I told her to piss off and hung up. Didn't really need that job too badly, but it was in a different country, so the travel aspect was the main reason. Years later I found out it was a stress interview, which apparently is a thing. Fuck those people. Had an interview at an office supply store once. Guy told me straight up it was a high-pressure sales quota job. Their prices on computers and peripherals were shit, and that's what I'd be selling. Dude straight up said it's a lot of work for low pay. Not a lot of people enjoy working there. And he finished off with the fact that he's been there for 18 years. Practically ran out of that interview screaming. As the interviewee, I told them I hated salespeople when they asked why I'd left my last job. Which exposed two things about me. I hadn't looked up the company I was interviewing with, and that their primary line of business was sales. The mood got chilly real fast after that. Did not get the job. As the interviewer, had a guy ask if it was okay if he went to the restroom real fast and then never came back. His recruiter, who had come with him, was super embarrassed by the whole thing. Honestly, he was a young kid who just graduated. And while he was getting some of the more in-depth technical questions wrong, he definitely was asking the right questions in return. So we probably would have brought him on entry level. I think he was experiencing a case of imposter syndrome since we were asking him things he didn't know, so he panicked. Hope he received some coaching on how to handle that. An interviewer told me that he worried I would be sexually harassed if I joined his team. Red flag. The first question they asked was a statistics exam type question. Took me completely off guard. I half-assed the answer. A complete answer would have taken half an hour. The next question was about a Punnett square analysis. I answered honestly, and said that the first thing I would do would be to look it up. Errors in Punnett squares are incredibly common. And I wouldn't trust anyone who said they could do it off the top of their head. I'd look it up even if I'd done one last week. They really didn't like that answer. They wanted to know where my husband worked and where we lived. And they concluded that our 6-month rental location was completely incompatible with the commute to their location. The whole thing was just super weird. It was like they sat down determined to find a reason they should not hire me. I was relieved to get out of there. Edit. Brain fart. My apologies. Latin square. Not Punnett square. Too much time spent quizzing my kid before his bio test. Background. My face tends to get really red when I'm stressed, embarrassed. In a previous job, my company hired a consultant to help some of us improve our presentation skills. Consultant gave me some good advice. One of the weirder pieces of advice, however, was that if my face got red, I should flex my calf muscles because the flexing would divert blood away from my face and to my legs. I had no idea if that was true or not. But it was weird enough that I remembered it. Job interview. About 10 years later, I'm giving a presentation at a job interview. I'm a scientist, and giving a research presentation as part of a job interview is pretty common. My research was pretty good. But it had one critical flaw that I wanted to avoid discussing during my presentation. Somehow, everyone in the room locked in on the flaw and directed a barrage of critical questions at me. I could feel my face starting to get red, and all I could do was furiously flex my fucking calf muscles. Which didn't do a damn thing. I didn't get the job. When he said, "I'll give you extra hours if you bring me smokes every day." Then put his hand on my leg and said his wife gives him passes to have fun. I also got a speeding ticket on the way to the interview. Was not my month. An agency sent me for an interview and said, the starting salary is £33,000. The interview went fairly well until the interviewer said, "So what sort of salary are you looking for?" So using the info I had from the agency, I said, "Well, I think £33,000 is a fair starting point." The interviewer practically threw me out. He started to shout about wasting his time because I expected to be paid a huge salary, and who did I think I was? He was paying £20. Maybe not the worst, but one that stands out. I was the interviewer, hiring for a position working with individuals with mental and/or physical disabilities. The person I was interviewing used the word retarded multiple times. I pointed it out after the second use, stating this is a position working with people with disabilities. That is a word that is not tolerated in this environment." They shrugged it off. Maybe 2 minutes later. Dropped it again. I stood up, thanked them for their interest, handed them back their resume, and told them I could already tell it wouldn't be a good fit and didn't want to waste their time, and walked them to the door. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to drop a like. If you would like to see more content like this in the future, subscribe and turn on notifications to be notified about future videos. Now check out one of these interesting videos.